This legislation undermines trust in our parliamentary democracy, where it reduces the power and the ministerial accountability and the oversight from what it could be. The lack of consensus around the bill, which my colleague Mr Goff has drawn attention to, places public trust on the line and puts it in jeopardy. That is not acceptable. This bill fails some simple tests of some simple management principles, and I think that it could be renamed, or more accurately named, Mr Chair, the Government Communications Security Bureau and Related Legislation Amendment (brackets failure to apply simple management principles) close brackets bill. This bill, Mr Chair, does not clarify sufficiently the lines of accountability. That is a simple management principle. When you've set your objectives, and we don't quite know whether those have been adequately set either, then you have some clear lines of accountability for delivering them. Then you have transparency, Mr Chair, and then you have sanctions and rewards. Those are four simple management principles. You have a clear goal, you have a lines of accountability, you have transparency around reporting, and you have sanctions and rewards. Those are simple management principles. This bill, Mr Chair, does not adequately address these principles. It does not provide for them. And the way to get to adequate provision for these simple principles would be to have a full and independent inquiry. And that, Mr Chair, we know has been ruled out by the Prime Minister. He doesn't want to see the 88 illegal spying incidents looked further into, that the Kitteridge report gets into, the leaked report, I might add. He doesn't want to answer more questions about the journalists' emails that were released, that weren't released, that we're not sure quite whether the email was recalled or not, and who was looking at what and why. He doesn't want to get into the Henry inquiry. He doesn't want to front up on this issue anymore, because it has been an embarrassment from start to finish. Everything to do with the GCSB has been an embarrassment from start to finish for a Prime Minister who does not have adequate oversight of his department. And that is where these simple principles would make it much clearer that the Prime Minister was doing his job, were he to be doing his job, if they were outlined clearly, and they would, I have no doubt, be the recommendations of a sensible independent report that looked at these agencies. These particular principles ought to be strengthened. We ought to have clear and purposes and goals. We ought to have lines of accountability. We ought to have transparent reporting, and we ought to have sanctions and rewards for a minister as to whether they're doing their job correctly. And that is the job of Parliament. But what we are increasingly seeing here, Mr Chair, is a Prime Minister who doesn't know, or doesn't want to know, what is going on under his watch. He cannot duck this ministerial responsibility, and nor should we put through legislation that allows him to do that when we know that New Zealanders are losing their faith in this agency that he is responsible for. Instead, we should have the opposite. That is why the call has been put out by the Labour Party for a full and independent inquiry to restore trust in these agencies. The Labour Party believes that we do need adequate security arrangements. In fact, we want the best possible security arrangements with the best possible guarantees given to New Zealanders that the powers of our intelligence agencies are exercised and not misused, that the surveillance that is done is properly and appropriately targeted. New Zealanders as a whole accept the need for security agencies, but they do not accept that they should be able to be snooped on without due cause, without warrant, and without clear lines of accountability back to the minister responsible for these issues. And that is John Key, the one who was running for the hills when it came to press conferences yesterday. Not running in to help, but running for the hills. That is our Prime Minister, running away from these responsibilities. And the bill that is here in front of us enables the Prime Minister to run further. So we repeat our call for a full inquiry into the intelligence services. Now, this bill also snubs the experts and could also be titled, more accurately, Mr Chair, I would suggest, the Government Communications Security Bureau and Related Legislation Amendment (brackets) snubbing the experts bill, close brackets, because we know that the Human Rights Commission exercised its powers. It took the unusual step of exercising a statutory power to issue a report directly to the Prime Minister because of the seriousness of the issues raised in this bill. John Key rubbished it, tried to downplay it, threatened the funding, but they stated clearly a full and independent inquiry into New Zealand's intelligence services should be undertaken as soon as possible. That's the first expert. The next expert, the Privacy Commissioner, suggested that because of the complex dynamic environment, this topic needs to be considered in further detail. The effects on individuals are potentially very significant, and it is important to get this legislation right. And that comment by the Privacy Commissioner is backed up by New Zealanders. They believe that too. Likewise, the Law Society, Mr. Chairman,
Andrew Little.
Mr. Chairman, the reality about the government communication security